Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the Office of Public Instruction's Updating School Plans and Federal Data Reporting process for the ESSER grant. We appreciate you coming in this afternoon to learn more about this grant compliance components. And as we go through the slides, feel free to put in the chat any questions that you may have. There is about a 15-second delay, but feel free to put them in the chat. We'll also have all of our contact information available shortly on a few slides. And all of the information today will be posted on the OPI website under the ESSER tab, and then frequently asked questions and resource guides. So the recording will be there, as well as the slide decks to review later on. And to start with, my name is Wendy Fawns, and I am the ESSER and EANS Director. And with me today is Rebecca Brown, who is the Program Manager.
Hi, everyone.
So we're going to go ahead and dive into this. And here is some information that you may want to go back and look at. Again, this is the contact information. Cisco and Edgenomics have some information that might be of value to you that demonstrates these types of items, the plans and the data collection across the United States. So several different resources that they have as well. Next slide, please. So as far as the ESSER team, you have several people that you can refer to as you are processing ESSER, the grant, both with regards to the plans, the data collection, but also just general processing of the grant. And all of us are here to help you. We generally have some areas of expertise that we will focus on, but if we don't know the answer, if you reach out to us, we will help connect you to the person who does. Next slide, please. So at a high level, this is what we're aiming to focus on today. The school plans, it's a compliance of the ESSER grant, and there are two of them. There is the Safe Return and the ESSER ARP. And the ESSER ARP plan is a use of funds. In other words, what are we going to use these funds for going forward? Both of those plans are required to be updated at least every 6 months with meaningful stakeholder involvement. So we're going to talk about that. And then another compliance is the annual federal data reporting. And sort of a way to look at that is to look at the past and anticipated data collection, as well as tips for preparing as we go forward. We do not at present have the actual dates that the data and information that are going to be collected from the feds. We don't have that information. However, we have made some projections based on what was happening the last 2 years, and I'll show those to you. Next slide, please. So school plans, we're going to go through a brief overview of what these plans are. There is a little bit more in-depth view from our September training, and you can find that at this YouTube link, but you can also reference that from our website. Next slide, please. So the plans, the two of them, and we're going to start with the ESSER plan, and the ARP ESSER plan has a high level anticipated use. So it's what are you going to, very high level of how are you going to use these funds? And it's changeable through amendments throughout the life of the grant. So when this grant was started, you may have decided that you wanted to run an after school program. And that was where a significant amount of your money was going to be. And then later you decided that because another agency came in and ran that program successfully, and you've had some good gains from that, that now you want to use the ESSER funds for an HVAC system to help with air quality. And so in that regard, you can amend your grant, you can amend the budget. Districts also have to maintain these plans. And that is, again, twice a year, you have to go in and update the ARP ESSER plan and add that with community engagement. So you do need to involve the community in, these are the new plans, this is what we're going to use the funds for. The Office of Public Instruction reviews those plans in June and December. And then what we recommend is that you consider updating in May and November. That way our view will always be in compliance with what you've done. That is just a consideration. You do not have to update them in May and November if you don't want to. The ARP plan, use of funds, those are entered, or the way that you update them is through a program called Qualtrics, and there's a secure portal access, and it generates a confirmation email that also has a PDF file. One thing we do is to ask you not to share the portal access, because that access is unique to your district. So it actually tags into your specific file. And so we want to make sure that is available to just you and your district. And then you go in and update only your district's data that was input from the previous year. Coming back to you, you will get a confirmation email, and then it will give you a link to get a PDF of that file. We are just getting ready to send out emails to everyone with new user access, user names, and also the LE number and the last PDF that you just updated. So we're just getting ready to send out a mass email on all of those. So you should get updates shortly. Next slide, please. So when we look at the safe return plan, that's a little bit different. So the safe return plan is sort of, think of it as like an earthquake or an intruder lockdown plan. And it's something that is going to tell you not to send people to the green door when the green door has been painted black. So you do need to update these regularly just to make sure the instructions you're giving people matches. It is generated and maintained at the district level. It also is updated twice a year with community engagement. And it also OPI is also required to review in June and December. This document is stored on the district site in a PDF as well. Next slide. So when we look at these two plans together and what is required for maintenance, some things to consider. You may want to have both files stored in the same location, so the same folder perhaps on your server. You might want to consider a file naming convention that has an author's name and date in the district. And I gave some examples there. And the PDF might be on this, both of them might be on the same web page. So that provides an opportunity for people from the public or parents, your teachers, to be able to go right in and find both plans in the same place. And if you're a new superintendent or a new clerk coming on board, finding all the things that are in one place or named by who created them, then you have some historical context to go back and look at. Next slide, please. These are just some examples of school plans. And so you'll notice right there that we've got Glendive right at the top. We've also got Evergreen. You can see that they've got their logos, they've got their name. And then if you scroll down, you'll also see the date that they were last updated. So you can see on the Evergreen side, June 2022. And the same thing is true with Glendive. So you want to have at the beginning of both of these plans something that says your logo and then when the plans were updated so that it's very clearly visible that way on your website. Next slide, please. As far as stakeholders' involvement, there's a drop down in the Qualtrics plan which will ask you how are you doing with stakeholder input? What are you using? Parents, teachers, staff, all of the above? Are you notifying people via a website, via public meetings, social media, emails? So there are lots of different ways that you can involve the public. And the frequently asked question guide on page 14 and 17 also gives some information with regards to these requirements. Again, we had a specific YouTube video on this meaningful stakeholders engagement, and you can look at that as well. Next slide. So now we're going to jump from the plans into the reporting. And before I do that, I'm going to pause for just a minute to see if there are any questions at this point. So seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and continue, and we're going to dive into the annual reports. So in the annual reports, the main piece that we're focusing is on that student gain. So the Department of Education indicates that all activities that are charged to ESSER, the cost must be reasonable and necessary to meet the overall purpose of the program or of the grant. And that purpose is to prepare, prevent, and respond to COVID. And so you need to look at that in terms of all your use of funds, but also then the annual reporting is going to focus on those things. It's going to ask, so how did you prepare? How did you prepare? How have you responded to? And our past first and second year reportings really dealt with a yes and no. Did you respond to COVID by technology purchases? Yes or no? Did you respond to COVID by hiring more staff in an after school format? Did you prevent lost instructional time by hiring more staff or mental health counselors? Yes or no? In this current data or annual report, we are anticipating that the Department of Ed is going to ask more specific questions, more asking how many staff did you hire? How much money did you spend on technology? So more detailed on the ask than just a true or false. In order to provide that information, tracking of allocated funds is important. You can find that information in eGrants, so you can go in there and look at your budgets and how you've spent. You can look at tracking your own cash requests, so that's another way. Um, and then we also will show you in a little bit, we have a slide that a business manager in Corvallis created to track funding, because the annual data reports will ask not just for ESSER overall, but with ESSER 1, 2, and 3. So it's going to be asking questions: how much technology did you spend that was from ESSER 2? And how much did you spend from ESSER 3 on technology? So not only will it ask for perhaps a dollar amount, but also which grant did it come out of, ESSER 1, 2, or 3. Next slide, please. When we look at the first 2 years of data reporting, most of it was focused, the first one was really focused on those attendance campaigns. And the second one started to focus more on these intense academic interventions, health targets, recruitment and retention, math and reading, and then those activities that happen beyond the high school platform, preparing for lost instructional time. And this third year, this is what we're kind of focusing is more of those intensive items, more focused items that we anticipate the Department of Ed is going to be asking more detailed about. Next slide. When you look at the annual report, you're looking at greater transparency in the spending that is related to outcomes. So it's kind of thinking about this in the sense of, we had sort of a 2-year pilot, and now we're moving into the third year, and we're looking at how are we using those funds, not only in the past, but how was that informing our decisions as we move forward. And the Department of Ed is looking at the fact that it was a lot of money. It's from a public view, and they really do want to know how it's spent, so that those asks that they're doing tend to be more detailed as we go forward in the grant itself. Next slide. So in order to do some of those tracking, we do have some tips for you. So one is, in your tracking of expenditures, you may want to use an Excel sheet and think about how your funds are braided together perhaps, but not blended. So if you have installed an HVAC system and only $5,000 of a $20,000 budget came out of ESSER, you still want to record that. So you want to say that a portion of it came out of ESSER, and which flavor of ESSER. Was it 1, 2, or 3? You want to also identify the student gains that have occurred. So what have been the gains of installing that HVAC if it was installed the first 2 years? Or what do you anticipate the gains to be? And you want to probably review your expenditures quarterly, so that you don't end up at the end of the grant cycle trying to process a final expenditure report and having challenges at that point because something doesn't reconcile. So good practices and tips that we've heard from other business managers and clerks throughout Montana have been these types of items, and they often use an Excel sheet to track. So that's just something you may want to include. The other thing is to engage the public, and that really promotes the sharing and building up of support in your district. So if you say to the public, we have been running an after-school program that's been extremely productive, it's been very supportive of the students, these are the student gains, and it has come out of ESSER funding. That helps them understand how this program then still needs to be funded into the future. ESSER fundings will leave in 2023 and 2024. And so engaging the public now in these positive outcomes helps the public understand the need for changes and additional funding you will need in subsequent years to maintain those programs and those benefits of ESSER funding. Next slide. So the annual report, we've got funding and outcomes. You need to make sure that you have those as part of your stakeholder involvement, showing them. This is on our website. We have what the districts were allocated, how it's been divided out. So that's all a public view that you can walk the public through that. You can talk about participation numbers and how many students have participated in a particular program. Many schools have engaged partnership with agencies on social emotional counseling that has been done. Some have engaged the entire community in those discussions. So sharing that out by saying how many people participated, and just the gains that you've had from that participation. Including that stakeholder comment going forward, so it's not just a one-time shot, is important. So really involving teachers and parents and the community. Connecticut actually gave $1.5 million of the ESSER funds. They gave that to students to make some of the decisions of how the funding would be used, because they feel that that's a group that needs to be involved in the decision of funding for ESSER. Next slide. So just in closing, wanted to show you our updated ESSER site. So on the landing page of OPI, you'll see ESSER over in the right-hand side. And then on the right, you're going to see a screenshot of the actual ESSER page. And if you were to scroll down from that first page, you would see many accordions that would open up and drop down and give you additional information, like frequently asked questions, handouts, those types of things would be available for you, webinars. As always, you're welcome to reach out to the Office of Public Instruction, to myself or Rebecca or any of the other people that are listed on that ESSER team. You can reach out to any of us if you have questions or want clarification of something that you're doing with ESSER. All of our phone numbers are listed, so you're welcome also to call us. If you do send an email, we would really appreciate it if you would put in the subject line the full name of your organization, so not an abbreviation, but a full name, and then also your eGrants number, so the LE number as you go into eGrants. That will help us pull up historical context to better support or answer the question that you may have. Are there any questions? And again, I know there's a 5-second delay in terms of your typing. I often wish it said in the right-hand side, someone's typing so I'd know. All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close down for today. But again, thank you for attending, and feel free to jump back on at a different time. We can set up a Zoom meeting and answer again any questions that you may have by phone, by Zoom, or via email. Thank you again.